At 19, Adrian Vance coaxed me into tasting the forbidden fruit. 6 years later, he coaxed a young, delicate intern onto his lap in the very same way. Everyone assumed that even if I saw him with another woman with my own eyes, I wouldn't dare say the word, breakup. But this time, I was suddenly tired of it. On a night of pouring rain, I dragged my suitcase and left. After a long while, Adrian finally called, his voice casual. "The rain's too heavy, you could have left tomorrow." I didn't answer. The phone at my ear was suddenly taken away. I instinctively turned my head, only to be pressed tightly against the French doors from behind. As the call was disconnected, Damien Thorne whispered in my ear, "Elara, the rain is so heavy, why don't you stay at my place tonight?" When I pushed the door open, a young woman was sitting on Adrian's lap, a beige silk blouse, a black pencil skirt, the standard uniform for interns in the secretarial pool. It was a mature, professional look, but the young woman wore it with an air of innocence. Seeing me, she flushed with shame and struggled to get off Adrian's lap, but he merely lifted his eyes and gave me a faint glance, his arm holding her even tighter. "Don't be afraid, I'm here," he said, his handsome, roguish face a picture of gentleness. For a moment, I was transported back to my 19th year. He had coaxed me just like that, coaxed me to kiss him, to hold him, coaxed me to get a hotel room with him, coaxed me not to be afraid, to trust him with myself completely. And now, the same words, the same tenderness, were being used on a younger girl. I suddenly laughed. Adrian smelled of alcohol, his eyes hazy with intoxication. "Elara, what are you laughing at?" I slowly let my smile fade and spoke softly. "Adrian, let's end it here." Without waiting for his response or paying any mind to the sudden silence in the room, I gently slipped the plain band I had worn on my middle finger for 5 years from my hand and placed it on the coffee table in front of him. I turned to leave. Adrian didn't stop me. Naturally, he didn't get up to chase me either. We had been together for 5 years. He had become one of the city's most sought after new tycoons, while I was just an obscure host at a small TV station. So, even after catching him with another woman, no one believed I would be the one to say the word, breakup. As I closed the door, I heard voices from behind me. "Elara is just trying to save face. Adrian, you should go and coax her when you get home tonight." "No need," Adrian chuckled. "Why don't you go ask her if she dares to break up with me? All these years, I'm the one who gave her a place to stand. I'm the one who gave her a home." Adrian was composed and condescending. "She doesn't dare, and she can't bear to." I clutched the doorknob, frozen. I straightened my back, but tears suddenly streamed down my face. When we were young, I was moved and fell completely for him because he promised me a home. Years later, that same promise had become a sharp sword piercing my heart. It's true what they say. The people closest to you know best how to hurt you the most. I spent 3 days at home packing. During those 3 days, many of our mutual friends tried to probe, but I didn't reply to any of them. I just calmly packed all my things, my heart a placid lake. On the evening I was set to leave, I meticulously checked the entire house, making sure not a single strand of my hair was left behind before calling a car. After the moving truck had taken all my luggage, a sudden torrential downpour hit the city. Thunderstorms were my greatest fear. When I was a child, my parents died together on a night just like this. In the past, Adrian would hold me through every rainy night like this one. I had once relied on him completely, but not anymore. The taxi drove me into the pouring rain. I was staring blankly at the waterfall of water streaming down the window when the car suddenly lost control, broke down, and screeched to a halt. The car behind us couldn't stop in time and rear-ended us. Thankfully, the impact wasn't severe. Still shaken, I looked back. The rain was immense. A Rolls-Royce with dual license plates sat motionless like an ark on a vast sea. The taxi driver's curses died in his throat. A black umbrella opened, and a man in a black business suit stepped out. His expensive leather shoes stepped into the flowing rainwater as he walked to my car. The umbrella shielded him from the downpour, revealing a cold, handsome face beneath it. I was completely stunned, my eyes wide with shock. "Mr. Thorne." Damien Thorne looked at me, his expression flat, a playful glint slowly appearing in his eyes. What a coincidence. The car entered the underground garage of Damien's private residence. The moment the driver got out, Damien cupped my chin and kissed me. I panicked, dodging and pushing him with all my might, but Damien simply grabbed my wrist, his voice icy. "When you set me up back then, did you ever think this day would come?" My wrist ached from his grip, but I had no words, only managing to mumble apologies. "I'm sorry, Damien. I'm so sorry." Whether I knew about it at the time or not, whether it was my intention or not, The fact was that Damen had been framed, and his reputation had been damaged. Don't try to placate me with that, Elara. Last time I didn't lay a single finger on you, yet I was branded a rapist. So today, why don't we make that accusation a reality? Damen wiped a drop of water from the corner of my lips. My face was pale as I stared at him. Mr. Thorne, don't even try to make me go soft on you. He slowly pulled down my shoulder strap. You should know perfectly well, I have a hard face and an even harder heart. I closed my eyes in despair, remembering the scandal that had lasted for half a month, remembering how Damen Thorne's name had been linked with the word rapist, although the matter was suppressed and no one dared to mention it again. The damage to his reputation had caused him to lose a major project, and that project had ultimately fallen into Adrian's hands. So, even if it had all been a coincidence, a misunderstanding, Damen would never believe it. A man like him would never swallow such an insult. Not here, please. I tugged lightly at his sleeve, my voice trembling with a sliver of hope. I'm begging you, Damen. Damen gave a faint smile. Save those words for the bedroom. The truth was, Adrian and I had rarely shared a bed in the last year. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to be with a man, so when Damen tried to enter me, I wasn't ready. The pain made me pound on him and bite his arm. Damen, can you get out first? Please. I was trembling all over, sweat beading on my forehead, but Damen looked just as uncomfortable. His face was tense, his Adam's apple bobbed, and his voice was deep and husky. Looks like your man isn't very capable. Elara, can you not mention him? I lowered my eyes. Adrian and I have already broken up. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. Damen suddenly gave me a long, hard look. The next second, the man who had been unyielding suddenly pulled back. I let out a breath of relief, my grip on his arm instinctively loosening. But then, Damen tightened his hold on my waist. The force of a volcanic peak met the searing heat of molten rock. My fingertips dug into his flesh, my voice shattering into pieces. Outside, the rain poured, its deafening roar masking all the sensual sounds within the room. At dawn, the rain had not stopped. Damen carried my drenched body to the French doors. My phone suddenly rang, again and again, refusing to stop. It was Adrian. I answered with a trembling hand. You moved out. His voice was devoid of any emotion. My fingertips were cold against the glass. Yes, I answered hoarsely. When? Tonight. The rain's too heavy. You could have left tomorrow. His voice was so casual, so ridiculously casual. Before I could reply, the phone was snatched from my ear. I instinctively turned, but Damen had already pressed me tightly against the glass. He glanced at the lit screen and, pressing his lips to my ear, ended the call. The rain is so heavy. Elara, why don't you stay at my place tonight? I shook my head, my wet hair sticking to my back. The black and white created a shocking visual contrast. Damen bent down and kissed my neck. Again, I didn't refuse, only asking softly, can we call it even? The emotion in Damien's eyes turned icy. He smiled, his fingers tangling in my long hair. You want to call it even? Fine. He wrapped my wet hair around his slender fingers, pulling gently to press me closer. With his other hand, he gripped my chin, forcing my face up. The night was dark, but his eyes were deeper still. Then let me make that accusation a reality. Elara, that's the only way we'll be even. My scalp tingled. He wasn't actually using much force, and in truth, during the previous 2 times, I could feel he had been holding back. Otherwise, I would have been torn and injured. The physical difference between us was just too great. If he really wanted to vent his anger, to make that accusation a reality, I would be the only one to suffer. Perhaps because we had done the most intimate thing between a man and a woman tonight, and once that line is crossed, so many things change. Strangely, I didn't feel much fear. I just looked up at him, even managing a small smile. All right then, Damen, make it a reality, just one thing. I stood on my tiptoes and kissed the corner of his lips. I don't want to get hurt. My job requires me to be on camera. After all, perhaps it was the first time I had ever actively tried to please him. As he lowered his head to meet my kiss, his voice deepened. Elara, you have a second option. What is it? You take the initiative. You please me, and maybe, I'll let you go. My eyes widened. Damen was a different kind of man from Adrian. His reputation had never been great, and it was said he hadn't played clean on his way to the top. But in recent years, as his business empire grew, he had gradually shed his rough and tumble aura. I remembered an interview he gave to a financial journal last year. He was sophisticated, calm, and composed. Some in the media had even praised him as a refined entrepreneur. Because of this, Many had almost forgotten that Damen wasn't a young master groomed by a wealthy family for decades. In fact, more than 10 years ago, he was still hustling for a living on the docks. At his core, there was no gentleman's code. What's wrong? Damien's lips curved into a smirk. Scared, I shook my head, unable to stop myself from biting my lip. No, it's just, I don't know how. The smile on Damien's lips faded. After all those years with Adrian, he never taught you. Before I could speak, he added, you seemed to know how that night. My face flushed crimson. At the time, I thought I had lost control because I was drunk. It was only later that I slowly realized my drink had probably been drugged. Otherwise, no matter how drunk I was, I would never have done something so scandalous as clinging to a man and trying to tear his clothes off. I think my drink was drugged that night. That's why I acted like that. Damen looked down at me, his face devoid of any smile. Did you ever ask Adrian what he put in it? I was taken aback. Mr. Thorne, that was just an accident. But as I said it, a seed of doubt began to sprout in my heart. When Adrian snatched that project, I had wondered if he had used me. But back then, my relationship with Adrian hadn't yet fractured. People always tend to favor those they love. Now that Adrian and I were completely over, some of my thoughts were suddenly starting to change. Damen suddenly let go of me, his gaze tinged with a casual disinterest. I'm going to take a shower. He turned and walked straight into the bathroom. When Damen came out, I was still standing by the window. The rain had poured all night, and the entire city was swallowed by a swirling mist. I couldn't see a thing outside. I stood there, lost in thought. Damen came up from behind and wrapped his arms around me. His body was still cool from the water, and I shivered. What are you thinking about? About what we just discussed, Damen scoffed. You should be thinking about how to get me to let you go. Damen, I'm not in the mood. But before I could finish, he bent down and kissed me fiercely. Thinking about another man while you're with me. Elara, do you think I was too gentle with you before? The force of his kiss intensified, but his eyes were like frost. I suddenly felt a pang of fear. The Damen before me was a completely different person. I could see it clearly in his eyes. This time, he would show me no mercy. Damen, my survival instinct made me cast aside all my pride. It was said that Damen had caught the eye of a powerful figure when he was young because he was ruthless and unafraid to risk his life. A man like that wouldn't value human life very highly. I returned his kiss and wrapped my arms around his neck. You said I should take the initiative. I don't know how, but I can learn. Will you teach me? I promise I'll be a good student. The long kiss ended. Damen chuckled softly. All right. When I was straddling his muscular waist, my face was already burning. But Damen raised a hand and swept all the hair that had fallen over my chest behind my back. I bit my lip hard, wanting to cross my arms to cover myself, but he grabbed my wrists. Damen, I stared at him, tears welling in my eyes, but he was unmoved. Elara, his voice was just as cold. We've already done it. There's no need to be so coy and cover up. And besides, it's raining hard outside. You can be louder. Tears in my eyes. I shook my head. I can't. Damen, please. Don't force me. I really can't. I lowered my head, tears falling drop by drop onto his chest, afraid he would get angry. I struggled to free my hands to wipe them away, but he only held on tighter. Damen didn't speak. He just watched the woman sitting on him, crying silently. She wasn't stunningly beautiful. Her figure was a bit too slender. Her personality wasn't particularly charming either. She was always on the verge of tears. The slightest harsh word from him and she would look terrified, as if he might kill her at any moment. And she had a boyfriend of 6 years she had just broken up with. Damien's brow furrowed. He had never intended to get involved with a woman like this. But the absurd thing was, after the attempted rape incident, he found himself thinking about that night with alarming frequency, thinking about her tearing at his clothes, straddling him, thinking about how he'd had to grab her wrists to stop her, and how she'd looked so wronged, tears streaming down her face. If it were just lust, there had been countless women throwing themselves at him over the years. He'd even seen them strip naked and press against him, but he had never reacted this way. Later, he often found himself regretting that he hadn't just gone with the flow that night and made the accusation a reality. It had reached a point where he felt like a complete pervert, having someone watch Elara and Adrian 24/7. The moment she moved out of Adrian's house, he had followed her car like a stalker. When he took her away, he had blamed it all on his desire for revenge. But even though he wanted revenge, he couldn't stop himself from caring about her feelings. Her experience, the first 2 times, he had held back, restrained himself, never fully letting go. And yet, Alara still acted as if she had suffered some great injustice. Just a moment ago, she was even defending a scumbag like Adrian. He had honestly wanted to throw her out into the rain to sober her up, but in the end, he was the one who went to the bathroom for a cold shower. Damen despised this version of himself. He had always believed that a man should never let a woman control him. He was determined not to be soft this time, but as Alara hung her head and cried, his heart melted in her tears. Damen raised his hand. His slightly rough fingertips traced her full lips. She was petite and slim, but her cherry red mouth had full, slightly fleshy lips. Kissing her felt truly good, so good that, more than making love to her, he seemed to prefer kissing her. He loved to make her cry, to mess her up. What are you crying for? Damen lifted my chin. I had to raise my face, but the tears kept falling. I just said a few words to you, and you haven't even done anything yet. Damen wiped a tear from the corner of my eye. You're crying like this. Anyone who didn't know better would think I was actually raping you. I'm sorry. I stared at him, but the tears wouldn't stop. All right. Damen suddenly sat up and lifted me off him. He grabbed a thin blanket and wrapped it around me. Stop crying now, and we'll go to sleep. I stared at him in disbelief, my tear-filled eyes wide. I was frozen. Like a fool, Damien's lips curved. What? You don't want to sleep? I shook my head vigorously and immediately shut my eyes. Damen pulled back the covers and lay down. I instinctively curled up, trying to put some distance between us, but he simply pulled me into his arms. Alara, be still when you sleep, don't move around, or if you start a fire, you'll be responsible for putting it out. Okay, I whispered, lying perfectly still. I didn't dare move a muscle. Only when Damien's breathing became steady and even did I tentatively, carefully, move my stiff body, but just as I was about to slip out of his embrace, he rolled over and pinned me beneath him. Alara, I told you not to seduce me. I didn't. I say you did. In the darkness, Damen lowered his head and kissed me. He seemed to particularly enjoy kissing, and this one was exceptionally long. When the kiss finally ended, I realized with a jolt that Damen and I were already deeply connected, and this time, the sensation was markedly different from the previous two. A wave of fear washed over me, and I gripped his arm. Damen. It was too deep. I was so scared my whole body trembled uncontrollably. Damien's strong arms supported him on either side of me. He leaned down, his breath brushing against my ear. Alara, has he ever been here? My mind exploded. Tears burst from my eyes like a broken dam, but I couldn't tell if it was from the physiological pleasure or the fear of an experience I'd never had before. My fingers, gripping his arm, went limp. I felt like an island battered by a storm, about to be torn apart by the powerful force. The rain roared outside. In the dim room, Damen suddenly took my hand and pressed it against his lower abdomen. His top muscles were slick with sweat. Alara, his voice was hoarse and low, yet tinged with a satisfied pleasure. See, you're more powerful than the storm outside. I was in a daze, like a small boat tossed on a stormy sea. I didn't understand his words. All I knew was that my little boat was about to be smashed to pieces by the waves. This massive storm couldn't even get me wet. He said, but you've soaked me through and through. Alara, how are you going to make it up to me? When I woke up again, the storm had passed, and the sun was shining. Damen was not in the room. I went to the bathroom and soaked in the tub for a long time, my mind still a complete mess. After my bath, I plugged in my phone and turned it on. A flood of messages and missed calls poured in. A few were from Adrian. I didn't call back. I just deleted all his contact information. I had taken some time off, so I didn't have to go to the station for a few days. The moving company had already delivered my things to my new, small apartment, less than 20 square meters, with a monthly rent of nearly 20,000. It was a huge expense for me. Fortunately, Adrian had been generous over the years, and I had saved some money, so I wasn't worried about daily living expenses. The only problem now was Damen, but when I went downstairs, he was nowhere to be seen. After eating in the dining room, I tentatively said I was leaving. The housekeeper didn't stop me. Instead, she arranged for a driver to take me back to my apartment politely. I thought about it the whole way back and came to a conclusion. The debt between Damen and me was settled. We were even. This conclusion brought me a wave of relief. Calling it even was a good thing. A man like Damen was just too difficult to handle. Just one night, and I felt completely drained. If we were together every night, my life would be in danger. My new apartment was small, and I didn't have much luggage. It only took me half a day to get everything in order. The one-bedroom unit was enough for me to live on my own. It was no match for Adrian's luxury penthouse, but lying in my own little bed now, I felt a sense of peace. The afternoon sun was warm, and I fell asleep without realizing it. In my dream, I was 19 again. Adrian was coaxing me as we tasted the forbidden fruit in a hotel room. Afterward, I cried and cried, from the pain and from fear. He held me tightly and slipped a plain ring onto my middle finger. Elara, when you graduate, we'll get married, I cried in my dream. But I knew in my heart those tears weren't for Adrian. They were for the foolish 19-year-old Elara, for the lonely, helpless Elara who longed for a home. After deleting all of Adrian's contact information, he never tried to reach me again. I also distanced myself from our old social circles. As a result, I heard almost no news about him. When my leave ended, I went back to work at the station, only to hear some very surprising news. Sabrina, another host who I had never gotten along with, had managed to book the city's hotshot new tycoon, Adrian, for her show. The entire station was buzzing. After all, almost everyone in the city knew that Adrian never appeared on any shows, not even for interviews. I sat at my desk, stunned. A while back, my show had been on the verge of being cancelled due to its poor time slot and low ratings. At that time, Adrian was just starting to make a name for himself. He was handsome and charming, and very popular. The station's management had tried several times to get him on a show or for an interview, but he always refused. I had also entertained the idea, even asking him for a simple, off-camera written interview. I promised our relationship wouldn't be made public. Adrian had refused me too, but now, he was going on Sabrina's show, and he hadn't made any difficult demands. The station's list of questions was extensive, even including the audience's favorite topic, his love life. He knew perfectly well that Sabrina and I had a bad relationship. Ever since we were interns, she had been determined to crush me. Adrian was doing this on purpose, but I couldn't understand why. He had a wandering eye, a new flame. I broke up with him and moved out to make way for the new person. Shouldn't he be thanking me, since I couldn't figure it out? I stopped thinking about it. In any case, this was Sabrina's own skill and luck. For now, I had no other choice but to focus on my own work. But that afternoon, I received another rejection, this time from the agent of a newly famous actress. I wasn't surprised. My show had always been lukewarm, and the guests we could get were mostly obscure. Elara, we need to think of something, fast, my partner said. Sabrina's episode is going to be a huge hit. It'll be the perfect excuse for them to cancel our show. I know, I'll try to think of something. If only we could get the great Damien Thorne. Of course, that's just a dream. My partner sighed and shook her head. Sabrina is so lucky. The station was actually planning to cancel her show, and then she pulls this off. Elara, do you think there's something going on between her and Adrian? I thought for a moment. I heard Adrian has a girlfriend. I don't think Sabrina has anything to do with him. I was soon proven wrong. That afternoon, Sabrina received 999 red roses. At 6 o'clock, Adrian's Bentley was parked right at the entrance of the TV station. Sabrina had changed into a beautiful strapless dress and practically skipped into his car. At 9 that night, I scrolled through Sabrina's Instagram. Adrian had taken her to my favorite revolving restaurant. The photo showed 3 dishes, all my favorites. The slender fingers of the man holding the knife and fork wore a plain band on the middle finger. I had looked at it for 6 years. I knew it better than anything. It was Adrian's. I smiled, put down my phone, and went to take a shower. When I came out, a call came from an old friend. I answered, but the voice on the other end was Adrian's. Elara, his voice was cold, laced with drunkenness. Move back in, and I'll be on your show. I couldn't help but laugh. Adrian, the day I left, I decided I would never go back. Elara, you know very well that if I go on Sabrina's show, your program will be cancelled. You'll lose your job. And, Adrian's voice suddenly softened. I've already fired that intern, and I never touched her. Elara, you have no family, and your relatives are distant. You should know that I'm the only one you can rely on. Adrian, I used to think that, but not anymore. Elara, don't be so stubborn. Don't call me again. I hung up and blacklisted my friend's number. Those friends were Adrian's friends. Anyway, since we had broken up, there was no need to stay in touch. My phone rang again. A strange number. Assuming it was Adrian, I hung up and blocked it. A moment later, another strange number sent a text. Elara, hang up on me again and see what happens. I was a bit stunned and replied, who is this? The call came again almost immediately. I hesitated, then answered. It was Damien's voice. Elara, you're getting bolder and bolder. Sorry, I didn't know it was your number. Who did you think it was? Adrian. Yes. He hung up. I was confused but didn't call back. Just as I was about to fall asleep, the number called again. Elara, open the door. My bedroom was tiny, and the bed was even smaller. The bathroom was pitifully small. When Damien came in after his shower and glanced at my bed, he frowned. I'll sleep on the sofa, I said, getting up to leave. The single bed was barely big enough for him alone, but Damien shut the bedroom door. I'm here to sleep with you, not the bed. My face grew hot. Keep your voice down. Don't say things like that. The walls are thin. Damien took off his towel and tossed it aside. He looked down at me. You're the one who needs to be quiet. As he pressed me onto the bed, he added, and cry quietly, too. We don't want the neighbors to think I'm committing murder. I couldn't help but glare at him. Can you stop throwing that word around? As he started taking off my nightgown, he smirked nonchalantly. Isn't it all thanks to you? I was speechless and shut my mouth. The bed was too small to move freely. The walls were thin, so I bit my lip and refused to make a sound. Damien was not satisfied. Move out tomorrow. Don't live here. Move where? I can't afford a better place. You know how expensive property is in this city. I'll buy you an apartment. He bent down and kissed me again. Move tomorrow. I was about to refuse when he added, if you're a good girl and move, I'll be on your show. Really? Of course, but there's one condition. I provide the interview questions. The news that Damien was going to be on my show spread through the station the next day, but what got everyone even more excited was the bombshell news Damien's secretary brought. Mr. Thorne will be officially announcing some happy news on the show. All I can say is that it's related to his love life. The station management was ecstatic. My partner was thrilled. A legendary figure like Damien, appearing on a live TV show for the first time in his life. This was 100 times more interesting than Adrian's appearance. After all, Damien was hauling cargo on the docks just over a decade ago. Now, he was a major player shaping the city's future. Who wouldn't be curious about a man like that? After the excitement died down, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my desk, lost in thought for a while. Damien was going to announce some happy news. If I guessed correctly, it was probably about his marriage. Who would be his fiancée? Countless socialites in the city were vying for his attention. Several prominent families were interested in an alliance with him through marriage. Damien's background wasn't great, and although he was successful now, his foundations couldn't compare to those of the old money families. He would probably marry a well-born young lady. None of this had anything to do with me, of course, but last night, he had said he would buy me an apartment and have me move in. Was he asking me to be his mistress? I may be insignificant, just an ordinary, obscure TV host, but being a mistress was something I would never agree to, not even for Damien Thorne. Not even if being with him meant I could have everything. I didn't move into the apartment Damien offered me. The next day, I submitted my resignation letter to the station again. By rejecting Damien, the show was doomed. I would once again be defeated by Sabrina. It was better to resign than to wait for my show to be cancelled, but the expression on my manager's face was strange. Elara, you can't resign right now. Why not? Because Adrian wants to be on your show, too. He cancelled on Sabrina. He wants to be on the same episode as Damien Thorne. I was completely floored. Had Adrian lost his mind? Or was there something wrong with my hearing? Elara, Damien's side has already agreed, and Adrian also wants to announce some happy news on the show. If this gets out, the whole city will explode. Elara, this is a massive opportunity. After this show airs, you'll be famous overnight. Take your resignation letter back. My manager handed the letter back to me. Go home and prepare. We start taping tomorrow. You need to be at your absolute best. On my way back to my office, I ran into Sabrina. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red and swollen. She had clearly been crying. When she saw me, she looked like she wanted to grind her teeth to dust. Elara, this is all your fault. You bitch. It's all you. You've ruined everything for me. Adrian is your boyfriend, yet you let him play me like this. What are you trying to do? How can there be a woman as vicious as you? Sabrina seemed to snap. She grabbed a flower pot and threw it at me. I was wearing high heels and nearly tripped on the carpet as I tried to dodge. All I could do was cover my head helplessly, but the pot never hit me. Damien had appeared out of nowhere. He stood in front of me. The flower pot hit him on the forehead, and blood started to flow immediately. The station descended into chaos. Security dragged Sabrina away. Someone called for an ambulance. I sat on the floor in a daze, pressing my hands to the wound on Damien's forehead. Warm, sticky blood seeped through my fingers. My senses slowly returned. Damien. I called his name, my voice dazed. Then, the tears started to fall. Perhaps I was crying too hard. Damien managed a small, pained smile. Elara, what are you crying for now? Don't talk. You're bleeding, Damien. So, I'm bleeding. Why are you crying? I couldn't answer. I just looked at the blood on his face and cried. Damien was taken to the emergency room for stitches. I sat on a bench in the hallway, completely devastated. A nurse finally came to get me when he was moved to a room. I looked at him lying there, a gauze pad and bandage on his forehead. Such a big, strong man, now pale and looking weak. Does it hurt? I asked softly, holding back my tears. Do you want some water? Damien nodded, then shook his head. Sit here. I obediently sat down beside him. Elara, kiss me. What? Come here, kiss me. Damien, you're hurt. It's just my forehead. I'll get you some water. I stood up to leave, but Damien suddenly let out a low groan. I jumped, rushing over to check his wound. He wrapped an arm around my waist and pulled me into his embrace. He tilted his head up and kissed me, deep and unrestrained, until I was breathless. Elara, why are you so good to kiss? Damien's fingers brushed over my slightly swollen lips. He then lowered his voice and whispered something dirty. My face turned scarlet, and I pushed him away. Don't even think about it. Damien raised an eyebrow with a roguish look. Can't even think about it. No. I glared at him. You rogue, scoundrel. You're right. 13 years ago, I was a scoundrel. I'm not talking to you anymore. Damien suddenly smiled. Elara, I'm hurt. Can you make me some soup tonight? Have your housekeeper make it. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. No matter what, Damien had gotten hurt because of me. I only know how to make the simplest lily and white fungus soup. What a coincidence. That's my favorite. Then I'll make it for you tonight. Damien's smile deepened. Good. Make it well tonight. I felt there was a hidden meaning in his words, but I told myself I was overthinking it. But that night, after I made the soup and he drank 2 large bowls, he complained of dizziness and asked me to help him back to his room. That's when I knew I hadn't been wrong about this rogue whose mind was constantly on one thing. And that night was the first time in my life I took the initiative. I helped him undress, helped him shower, I straddled his waist, but I was out of shape and lacked stamina. After just a few minutes, I gave up and refused to move. Damien didn't get angry. Perhaps it was because of his injury, but tonight felt gentle, like a soft rain. I liked it. In the end, I fell asleep comfortably in his arms. I don't even remember how I was bathed. The next day when I woke up, Damien was still sleeping. I stood by the bed for a while, looking at him, my mind racing. Originally, when I found out he was getting engaged, I had decided not to get entangled with him anymore. But yesterday, he got hurt for me. Let this one night be how we settle the score. It seemed that from the very beginning, the relationship between Damien and me was always about calling it even or settling scores. But at least now, there was a beginning and an end. I didn't wake him. I took a shower and left his villa. Sabrina was taken away by the police and was likely facing detention. I submitted my resignation letter again. As I was leaving the station, I ran into Adrian. Elara, he called out to me. He stood in the bright summer sun, still handsome and charming, but he was no longer the man I once loved. You're resigning. Yes. Don't you love this job? I did love this job, but now, I was just exhausted. With no connections and a refusal to play the game, I was destined to be sidelined, and relying on a man to climb the ladder meant forever being looked down upon. It's better this way, Adrian said, walking towards me. I never approved of you working anyway. It's hard work for little pay. What's wrong with being a housewife? I told you when I first started making money that I didn't want my wife to have to work so hard. Since you've resigned, come home with me, Elara. I'll take care of you from now on. He took my hand naturally, as if he had never been involved with that in turn. As if he had never slept with other women, as if we had never been apart. The sun grew brighter, and I squinted. How could the Adrian before me be so completely unrecognizable? I pulled my hand away. Adrian, we broke up a long time ago. Elara, come on. I know I made you angry last time, but it's been a while. You should have cooled down by now. I'm not angry. I looked at him calmly. Adrian, I'm serious. The smile on his face finally faded. Elara, you're 25. Don't be so childish and stubborn. Without a job, without me, how will you survive in this city? When I didn't answer, he softened his tone. You always wanted to marry me, didn't you? You wanted a home. Elara, I've already prepared our marital home. It's the one we looked at before, the villa on the peak at Bailey Road. We can decorate it just the way you like. Okay. I was about to refuse, but before I could speak, Damien's voice came from nearby. So, Elara, the reason you won't move into the house I gave you is because his is bigger. Damien leaned against his car, a cigarette dangling from his lips. looking every bit the roguish scoundrel. The wound on his head must have been aggravated. A patch of fresh red had seeped through the bandage. I frowned instantly. You shouldn't be smoking right now. Damen took the cigarette from his lips but didn't put it out. As far as I know, I bought the largest villa on Bailey Road. The one he bought isn't as big as mine. Elara, think carefully. Don't throw away a prize for a trifle. Adrian's face turned ashen. Damen Thorne. What do you mean by that? Damen shrugged. Isn't it obvious? I'm giving my woman a house. Your woman. Adrian gritted his teeth. When did she become your woman? Damen laughed. Didn't you send her to me yourself back then? The expression on Adrian's face changed dramatically. Damen didn't waste any more words on him. I had people carefully preserve the drinks Elara had that night. They've all been sent to the police. Mr. Vance, if you're innocent, the law will clear your name. But if you are the culprit, the law will not spare you. And neither will I. Damen stubbed out his cigarette just as a police car arrived. He said no more, walking past the defeated, looking Adrian to stand in front of me. Elara, I've been a good man for almost 5 years. Can I like you now? My eyes shot open. A hot wind blew past, and a memory, almost completely buried, came rushing back. A young girl who had just lost her parents in a shipwreck. A young hustler who earned his keep on the docks through sweat and blood. Two people who should have never crossed paths were suddenly connected by tragedy. The frightened girl wiped the blood from the boy's face after a fight, placing a cartoon band-aid from her school bag on the cut on his forehead. In a daze, the boy grabbed the hem of her white dress and wouldn't let go. Kind, hearted and soft, she sat with him on the dirty ground and didn't leave. When they parted, the boy asked the thin, frail girl, "What's your name? Can I come find you someday? Can I, like you?" The girl stuffed the rest of her band-aids and all her spare change into his hands. She just smiled. "Then you have to be a good person. I can't like a boy who gets into fights, and he can't like me either. If I become a good person, can I like you then?" "Of course, being liked is a happy thing." She waved goodbye. "I have to go. I'm never coming back here." She had lost her parents and was going to live with relatives. She was leaving this place, going to a new school, to start a new, completely different life. Later, when she grew up, she forgot all about that small incident. She met a handsome boy she liked and foolishly gave him her heart, but through the long river of time, there was someone who never forgot her for a single minute. No one knew the hardships he endured to get to where he was today, to become a good man, but by then, the person in his heart already loved someone else. Even so, he never thought of finding another woman, of liking someone else, until that night, until that accident. He, a man who had weathered countless storms, saw through the crude trick at a glance, but at that moment, only one thought filled his mind. He couldn't let her get hurt. He couldn't let her be sad, so he swallowed his anger. He didn't take revenge on Adrian, not until the person tailing her reported that she was packing her bags to move out of Adrian's house, not until he saw her leave with his own eyes, dragging her suitcase behind her. He couldn't bear to wait another second. He brought her back to his home. "It was you." The hazy memory sharpened, piece by piece, but the Damen before me and the boy with the buzz cut and the tattoo on his arm were impossible to reconcile. "Your tattoo. It was removed long ago. I didn't have money back then, so it left a scar." Damen rolled up his sleeve to show me his arm. There were indeed a few clear scars. "Elara, you still haven't answered me." Damien's expression was incredibly serious. "Are you sure you're a good person now? What kind of good person acts like you?" Damen frowned slightly. "Elara." He took a step forward and bent down to kiss me. "You're always most obedient when I'm kissing you. In broad daylight, with people coming and going." I raised my hands to push him away. He clutched his head and groaned. "Elara, my wound hurts." I froze, too scared to move. Damen kissed me contentedly for a while longer, then said, "Will you make me soup again tonight? In your dreams?" "Elara, why is your mind always in the gutter?" "I was just asking you to make me soup. I didn't mean anything else." Damen looked so earnest that I started to wonder if I was the one with the dirty mind. "Really?" Damen nodded seriously. I hesitantly got into his car. I made the soup, and he drank 2 large bowls. Then, using his injury and dizziness as an excuse, he tricked me into helping him upstairs. And that help led straight to the bed. As he settled me on top of him, I raised a hand to stop him. "Damen, you said before you were going to announce some happy news. What was it?" There were some things I had to be clear about. Even if I was starting to have feelings for him, even if we had a past connection, I wasn't willing to be the other woman, to be kept in the shadows. If he was really going to marry someone else, then ending things now wouldn't be too painful. Damen lay on the bed, looking at me with a frown. "Elara, I'm like this. And you still have the mind to ask about that. I glanced down and couldn't help but swallow, but I was a person of principle. Some questions had to be answered. Are you going to tell me or not? If you don't, I'm leaving right now. Damen gripped my waist and pressed me down. What else could it be? I'm 28. Of course I want to get married. To whom? To the woman who tried to pull my pants off the first time we met after all these years. Damen. I lunged at him, wanting to hit him. Damen just smiled, not dodging, letting me land a few blows. Are you done? He asked, slowly sitting up. He gave my backside a light slap. Now it's my turn, Damen. I glared at him, puffing out my cheeks, but he just lowered his head and kissed me gently. Elara, I've loved you for many, many years.